Well, last week we began our third and final mini-series in the book of Genesis, and we're calling it Family because we're going through the family line of Abraham and just kind of taking some life lessons, because as you read through the book of Genesis, especially the second half, it gets pretty messy, it gets pretty ugly, and there's some crazy stories in there, but there's a lot of things that we can learn today, even though we're 4,000 years or so removed from the time of Abraham and his descendants when they lived. There's still lots of things that we can learn today about life and how we should learn, how we should live life, and how God wants us to live our life today. But it all begins with Abraham. When God called Abraham out of the land of Ur, he was 75 years old. God promised him that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars. He would make him into a great nation, promised his descendants a specific piece of land known as Israel. And so God's made all these promises, but there's one problem. Abraham doesn't have an heir. He doesn't have any kids. He doesn't have a son to pass everything on to. And so at the age of 100, God finally gives him the promised son, the son that he promised him, and his name was Isaac. Isaac then grows up. He marries a woman named Rebekah at the age of 40. And so they go about 20 years in their marriage. They're unable to have any children. So just like his father Abraham, he cries out to the Lord and says, "Hey, God, you've made all these promises. I don't have any children." And so God says, "All right, well, I'm going to give you a son, not just one son, but two." So Rebekah becomes pregnant with twins, Esau and Jacob. Now, if you remember last week, Esau and Jacob, they didn't exactly get along, did they? So even in the womb, they were womb mates, you could say. But even in the womb, they didn't get along. They were wrestling and they were fighting each other in the womb. And Rebekah's like, "What in the world is going on?" And God kind of gave her a prophecy to say, "Listen, you have two nations in your womb. Two nations. The older will serve the younger." And so she kind of understood that, okay, the blessing of Abraham that's been passed on to Isaac, it's going to be passed on to the younger son. Well, as we know in the story, Esau was born first. And he was described as hairy and red. And the name Esau literally means hairy. And so I don't know many children walking around these days named Harry, but that's what they named their child, Harry, because apparently he was very, very hairy. He was also red. I don't know if his hair was red or if it's just his skin was tinted red, but he was known as red. And his descendants were called Edomites, and Edom means red. So we have a red, hairy, oldest born son. And then the second born son, his name was Jacob. And the name Jacob means grasping at the heel. And that's because when Esau came out, Jacob was grabbing his heel, almost like, "No, you're not supposed to go out first. I'm supposed to be first," and trying to pull him back in, right? So this kind of became a symbol foreshadowing their relationship and the relationship of their descendants in the future, that there would always kind of be this wrestling back and forth, this disagreement. And so their relationship, that it was kind of a tumultuous relationship, was kind of explained to us in a short story of how one day Esau, who was an expert hunter, he was an outdoorsman, he went hunting. And so he went hunting for several days, and he didn't find anything. He didn't kill anything. And so he's on his way back home. He hadn't had anything to eat for days, and he's starving to death. And so Jacob sees an opportunity and says, "All right, if you want some stew, the stew that I'm making, you're going to have to sell me your birthright." And so Esau, he agrees, and he sells his birthright to his younger brother for just a bowl of stew. And so what we learn from this story is that we need to value spiritual blessings over instant gratification, and how oftentimes we can ignore, we can overlook, and we can push aside what God is doing in our life just for a momentary instant gratification. And this world is just kind of eaten up, and it's designed and kind of built off of instant gratification. And that's really what we've seen, an explosion of technology and a lot of it's just to make life easier, right? We like instant gratification. We like microwaves, right? It's a microwave society. And so oftentimes we can push God to the side, put God on the back burner just for the sake of instant gratification, what we want, and we want it right now. So if you'll turn in your Bible to Genesis chapter 27, The story of Jacob and Esau is going to kind of go next level. And the Jacob deception has been associated with the name Jacob, especially in ancient Jewish days. You don't see many boys named Jacob. Not very many. Now, you do so today, but back in the day, in Bible days, you didn't really name your child Jacob because it was associated with deception. And we're going to find out exactly why today in Genesis 27. So it's a rather long story, so we're going to read a little bit, and then we're going to talk a little bit about it. And then at the end of the story, we'll kind of wrap things up and kind of talk about some things that we can learn and apply to our life. But let's begin in Genesis chapter 27, verse 1. When Isaac was old and his eyes were so weak that he could not see, he called his older son Esau and said to him, "My son." And he answered, "Here I am." He said, "Look, I am old, do not know the day of my death. So now you are hunting gear. So now take your hunting gear, your quiver and bow, and go out in the field to hunt some game for me. Then make me a delicious meal that I love and bring it to me to eat so that I can bless you before I die." So now Isaac here, he's 137 years old. And he's concerned that, hey, in my old age, I can't see anymore. I'm concerned I'm about to die. So I need to go ahead and I need to pass on the blessing. And when I mean the blessing, I'm talking about the blessing that God gave to Abraham, that Abraham gave to Isaac. And now Isaac is planning to give to Esau, who is the oldest born son. So he tells Esau, hey, go out, hunt some game. Find me some venison, cook me a meal that I love, my favorite meal, and bring it to me. And I'm gonna give you the blessing. And so this was supposed to be more of a formal ceremony type, back then. So this was a formal thing that he was asking Esau to do. And so he leaves. But why is Isaac thinks he's about to die? Well, his older son, or his older brother, half brother, Ishmael, died at the age of 137. So he's probably thinking, well, I'm 137. My other half brother, he died at 137. So maybe my day is near. So maybe I just need to go ahead and I just need to do this, pass this on to Esau before I die. Now, it's interesting, Isaac would go on to live another 43 years. So he's not near his time of death, but he doesn't know. He's concerned. So this is what is about to happen. He's told Esau, go out, hunt some game, fix me a meal that I love, bring it back to me, and I'm going to give you the blessing. Verse 5, now Rebekah was listening to what Isaac said to his son Esau. So while Esau went to the field to hunt some game to bring in, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, listen, I heard your father talking with your brother Esau. He said, bring me game and make a delicious meal for me to eat so that I can bless you in the Lord's presence before I die. Now, my son, listen to me and do what I tell you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats, and I will make them into a delicious meal for your father, the kind he loves. Then take it to your father to eat so that he may bless you before he dies. Jacob answered Rebekah, his mother, look, my brother Esau is a hairy man, but I am a man with smooth skin. Suppose my father touches me, then I will be revealed to him as a deceiver and bring a curse rather than a blessing on myself. His mother said to him, your curse be on me, my son. Just obey me and go get them for me. So he went and got the goats and brought them to his mother. And his mother made the delicious food his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best clothes of her older son Esau, which were in the house, and had her younger son Jacob wear them. She put the skins of the young goats on his hands and the smooth part of his neck. She handed the delicious food and the bread she had made to her son Jacob. So let's pause there for a second. So where does Jacob learn to be deceitful and conniving? Well, it's obvious. He gets it from his mother. The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, does it? So Rebekah is sneaky, conniving, deceitful, and Jacob kind of takes up that mantra as well. But once again, we have an example of somebody who's trying to take God's plans into their own hands, do things the way that they want to achieve God's plans. And this is exactly what Rebekah is doing. So she hears that Isaac is about to bless Esau. Well, she knows what God had prophesied, that the older would serve the younger, and that the younger son, who was Jacob, that's who the blessing is supposed to go to, that through the line of Jacob would come the Messiah. Like, she knew that that was God's plan, but she goes about it the wrong way, doesn't she? So she comes up with this plan to deceive Isaac. So she tells Jacob, hey, go get some goats, and I'm going to fix this meal for your father, and you're going to go in and you're going to act like Esau. But he's like, well, wait a minute. I'm not Esau. Like, Esau is hairy, right? So I'm not hairy. I'm very smooth. Suppose he touches me, like I'm going to be found out. And so what we realize is Jacob, he's not really concerned about doing the right thing here, is he? He's concerned about being found out. He's concerned that his cover is going to be blown. He's more concerned about how he looks, his appearance, his reputation, than he is his actual character. And there's a difference between reputation and character. Your reputation is what people know you as. Your character is who you really are on the inside when no one's looking. So he's more concerned about his reputation than he is his character. He's more concerned about getting away with it than actually doing the right thing. And so he follows through in his mother's advice. He goes and gets the goats. She prepares the goats for the goat skin so that they're hairy, puts it on his arms and on the back of his neck. And then to seal the deal, to seal the deception, she gets some of Esau's best clothes and has Jacob wear Esau's clothes. And that's going to come into play here in just a moment. Verse 18, when he came to his father, he said, "My father." And he answered, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob replied to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How did you ever find it so quickly, my son?" He replied, "Because the Lord your God made it happen for me." Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come closer so I can touch you, my son. Are you really my son Esau or not?" So Jacob came closer to his father Isaac. When he touched him, he said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him, but his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau. So he blessed him. Again he asked, "Are you really my son Esau?" And he replied, "I am." Then he said, "Bring it closer to me, and let me eat some of my son's game so that I can bless you." Jacob brought it closer to him, and he ate. He brought him wine, and he drank. So Jacob brings the meal to his father, Isaac, disguised as Esau. But Isaac notices that something's up. Like, he's not sure. He's not convinced. Like, are you really Esau? Like, you sound like Jacob. So he's like, "Come here. Let me touch you." And so he touches him. He's like, "Man, the voice is of Jacob, but it feels like Esau." So he follows through and he takes the meal and he gives him the blessing. But again, he asks point blank, like, "Are you Esau?" And what does Jacob say? "I am." Just a point blank lie, point blank deception to gain the blessing. Verse 26, then his father Isaac said to him, "Please come closer and kiss me, my son." So he came closer and kissed him. When Isaac smelled his clothes, he blessed him and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of the field that the Lord has blessed." So Isaac, right before he gives him the blessing, he just wants to double check. There's one more thing that he could do to make sure that it's Esau, is to smell him. So he tells Jacob, "Hey, give me a kiss." And when he does, and when he leans in, I'm sure he kind of smells him, and he smells, well, it's really the clothes of Esau, but he has Esau's smell. And I don't know if y'all know this, but every single person has a unique smell. Yes, we have unique thumbprints, but every single person has a unique smell. Our pets probably know this better than we do. But every single person has a unique smell. And Esau, being a man of the outdoors, being an expert hunter, his clothes probably smelled like outside. And if you have kids and they go outside and play and they come in, it's like, man, you smell like outside, right? You have the smell. And so he could smell, Esau smelled the outside, the fields, what the grass smelled like. And so that was enough to convince him, hey, he feels like Esau, he smells like Esau, it's got to be Esau. Even though it sounds like Jacob, we're going to go ahead and we're going to bless him. Verse 28, may God give to you the dew of the sky and from the richness of the land, an abundance of grain and new wine. May peoples serve you and nations bow and worship to you. Be master over your relatives. May your mother's sons bow and worship to you. Those who curse you will be cursed, and those who bless you will be blessed. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, and Jacob had left the presence of his father Isaac, his brother Esau arrived from hunting. All right, so Isaac, he gives Jacob the blessing. This blessing that was passed on from his father Abraham, he passes it on to Jacob. And soon as Jacob leaves, guess who arrives? Esau. I mean, this is better than the movies, right? I mean, you can just kind of see the drama playing out here. Verse 31, he had also made some delicious food and brought it to his father. And he said to his father, let my father get up and eat some of his son's game so that you may bless me. But his father Isaac said to him, who are you? He answered, I am Esau, your firstborn son. Isaac began to tremble uncontrollably. Who was it then, he said, who hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it all before you came in, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed. When Esau heard his father's words, he cried out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, bless me too, my father. But he replied, your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. So he said, isn't he rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me twice. He took my birthright, and look, now he has taken my blessing. Then he asked, haven't you saved a blessing for me? But Isaac answered Esau, look, I have made him a master over you. You've given him all of the relatives of his servants and have sustained him with grain and new wine. What then could I do for you, my son? Esau said to his father, do you only have one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father. And Esau wept loudly. So Esau enters with food, and immediately Isaac's like, well, who are you? Like, you were just in here. And then he realizes he's been duped. He's been deceived, that it was Jacob who came in and deceived him and took his blessing. And Esau wants to know, well, can't you bless me too? Like, isn't there more that you can give me? And Isaac's like, no, I've given it all to him. And it's like, well, can't you just, change course and say, oh, well, forget what I said to Jacob, I'm going to give it to you. Well, here's the deal. Back in these days, what he did was formal. It was a legally binding contract. So today, like if you sell your house, you go meet up with the lawyers, you sign the documents, and it feels like you sign your life away because you got all these papers to sign, right? And they notarize it, they stamp it all, and it's signed, sealed, delivered. It's a legal binding contract. This person selling their house to this person, right? And this is kind of how it was. This is kind of how they did contracts back then. This is very similar to what God did for Abraham when he had Abraham split animals in half and kind of make a path, and then God, in the form of flaming fire, walked through that path and burned up the animals. It was them entering into a contract, a covenant with each other to say, everything I've promised you, I will do. And so this is very similar to what Isaac is doing for his son, what he thought was Esau, but was really Jacob. He was entering into an irrevocable contract, a legally binding contract with his son, that the blessing of Abraham that was passed on to him would now be passed on to what he thought was Esau, but is now Jacob. So there's nothing he can do about it. What's done is done. And so Esau rightly so, is upset. And it says he wept loudly. But the story's not over. Verse 39, his father Isaac answered him, "Look, your dwelling place will be away from the richness of the land, away from the dew of the sky above. You will live by your sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you rebel, you will break his yoke from your neck." Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. And Esau determined in his heart, "The days of mourning for my father are approaching. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." When the words of her older son Esau were reported to Rebekah, she summoned her younger son Jacob and said to him, "Listen, your brother Esau is consoling himself by planning to kill you. So now, my son, listen to me. Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran and stay with him a few days until your brother's anger subsides, until your brother's rage turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send for you and bring you back from there. Why should I lose you both in one day?" So Isaac goes on to tell Esau, "Look, I'm sorry, but your blessing, you're not going to be able to partake in the blessing of this land. In fact, you're going to live far away from this land. You're going to live by the sword, which means you're going to be a people of war. Your descendants are going to be a people of war. You're not going to be able to partake. In fact, you are going to be subject to your brother, Jacob. He's going to lord over you. He's going to be master over you. And his descendants are going to be master over your descendants." So now Esau, he becomes angry. And so angry that he's planning to kill Jacob. He's just going to wait till his father dies. And then once his father dies, then he's going to go and kill Jacob. This is what he's thinking. So Rebekah finds out, because I'm sure they had servants all over the place. And she had servants that were loyal to her. So she finds out, hey, Esau's planning to kill Jacob. So Jacob flees at Rebekah's advice to his brother Laban in Haran to stay there, what she thinks is a few days. But the history of Jacob's descendants, known as the Israelites, and Esau's descendants, known as the Edomites, they have a long, tumultuous history. In fact, they ended up living what is modern-day Jordan, just east of Israel. And all throughout the Bible, you'll see occasionally the Edomites, they would rise up and be rebellious, and the Israelites would quickly just kind of put them under their thumb, just kind of squash the rebellion. They always kind of reigned and ruled under, kind of kept them at bay so that they could never capture the land, they could never rule over them. But something interesting happened when the Roman Empire was in play and they were ruling over the land of Israel. Caesar appointed an Edomite to be the ruler over Israel. His name was Herod the Great, the same Herod that expanded the temple and made it much bigger. His son was known as Herod the Tetrarch. He was the one who was in charge when John the Baptist was beheaded and when Jesus was crucified. And so almost fulfilling this prophecy to say, look, there's going to be this long, tumultuous history of your descendants, but one day they're going to kind of break the yoke. One day they're going to rule over you. And this is what happened. For several decades, you had those who were Edomites rule over the people of Israel because the Roman Empire was in charge and they placed them in charge. And when you look at throughout history, they were very quick to war. They were always fighting. In fact, it was King Herod the Great, that had all of the children in Bethlehem slaughtered. You know the story, the Christmas story, when the wise men came and King Herod, he wanted to know where this child was, and then when he realized that the wise men didn't come and tell them where the child was, that was to be the Messiah, to be the King of Israel, when they left, and he went and he slaughtered all the male boys that were age 2 and younger. He slaughtered them all. That was King Herod. He was an Edomite. And so this prophecy that Isaac gave no doubtedly was from God himself, that they would be a people of war. And you can read all throughout the New Testament how people, there were Edomites who would constantly go in and cause trouble, and they were killing Israelites. And so they were always a people of war. And there was always this tension between the two families, between Jacob and Esau, and this came to pass. And it all started with this deception. So Jacob, he asked to flee. And his mother, Rebekah, said, just go there for a few days. And that was the intention. However, those few days turned into 20 years. And Rebekah would never see Jacob again. She would pass away before he ever made it back home. And so this is a sad, sad story. In the book of 1 Corinthians, Paul, he gives us three types of people. One, he calls the natural man. The natural man is one who doesn't care about spiritual things. He's more concerned about things of this world. And so this would describe Esau. He didn't care about spiritual things. He cared about the things of this world. He cared about hunting and being great, and he didn't care about that. There's a second type of person that Paul talks about, and that is the carnal man. And this person cares about spiritual things. They just go about things the wrong way. They still try to achieve God's plan, God's ways, but they do it in a carnal way. They do it according to the flesh, according to their desires. And so to the carnal man, the ends justifies the means. So they see what God wants and they go about it the wrong way. And when you look at church history, we see this play out numerous times in numerous ways. People trying to achieve God's plan, God's mission, but doing it in horribly awful ways. Rebekah and Jacob, they're both perfect examples of this. They know God's plan, they know God's prophecy, they know that Jacob is supposed to receive the blessing, the birthright, and that everything's supposed to flow from him. But instead of trusting God, what do? They take matters into their own hands. This is the carnal man. The spiritual man, he knows God's will, God's ways, but relies on God, waits on God to achieve God's plan and does things in a godly manner and doesn't take necessarily God's plans in their own ways and try to do things according to their flesh. But this describes Jacob and Rebekah. They care about spiritual things, but they go about it in a horribly wrong way. The means by which they go about it is deception. Now, this is a dysfunctional family. I don't know if y'all can tell. And when you read the other chapters, you can tell that this is a very dysfunctional family. No one in this family, they trust each other. In fact, a couple chapters before, Isaac lies about his wife, Rebekah, being his wife, and says it's his sister. And Abraham, he did this twice as well. So I can imagine that maybe Rebekah has a little bit of a grudge. Maybe she's, has some bitterness towards her husband, that he wouldn't stand up for her, that he would call her sister and not his wife. And so why would she be deceptive like this? Obviously, Isaac is wanting to pass on the blessing to Esau. We have no idea if Esau knew God's plan, that the blessing was supposed to go to Jacob. We have no idea of knowing if Isaac was in rebellion to God, or maybe he was just clueless. Maybe Rebekah knew this and she just kind of kept it to herself and she never told her husband. We don't really know what's going on, but regardless, you have Isaac who's trying to follow the customs and pass it on to the oldest son, and you have Rebekah going against her husband. But then you have Jacob who's following through on her mother's plan. Now, when you read this, it's tempting to think that, Jacob and Esau, they're just young men who have no idea what they're doing. But Jacob and Esau are 77 years old. Like, they're their own man. They can easily say Jacob could easily say to his Mom, this is not the right way, I'm not going to do this. He could easily do that. But he likes it. He likes it. He's already deceived once. He's already tricked Esau once, and he's willing to do it again. And it's all about deception. The means was deception. And so everything falls apart, doesn't it? Their family breaks up, and it's all due to deception. And it was Sir Walter Scott who said, "Oh, what a tangle web we weave when first we practice to deceive." And it was a mess. It fell apart. Nothing really happened the way that Rebekah wanted. Now, God ends up honoring this, and the blessing does go through Jacob, but it was done so in a horrible, horrible manner. It totally broke up and destroyed their family. And here's the problem with deception. Here's the problem with deceit, is that at its root, it is pride and it is a distrust of God. Because deception is saying, you know what? I'm going to take matters into my own hands. I'm not trusting God to achieve His plan, and I'm going to do it my way. Rebekah hears that Isaac is about to give the blessing to Esau, and her first reaction is not to trust God, but it's to what? Take matters in her own hands. Well, God must have messed up. God must have been wrong. God must be asleep. Like, I've got to act. I've got to do something. And so what happens is, we end up saying, when we practice deceit or manipulation, we end up saying, I know better than God. And that's what pride is. It's thinking more highly of ourselves than what we ought. And we begin to think that, hey, I need to do this. And we begin to place ourselves in the role of what God is supposed to do. This is God's promise. This is God's covenant. God's going to do it His way. But Rebekah steps in. Why? Because she's got pride in her heart that she's going to make this happen. And sometimes we can do that. We feel like we've got to make something happen. So we manipulate. We deceive in order to get what we want or what we think God wants. But really, it's just pride. And really, it just reveals that we don't trust God at all. We don't trust God to provide and to make what He's promised happen. But also deceit, it destroys relationships. It separates. It divides. Listen to what Proverbs 16:28 says. And this is from the ESV. A dishonest man spreads strife, and a whisperer separates close friends. A dishonest man, it spreads strife. And this is what happens when we practice deceit, when we practice manipulation. It causes conflict. It causes strife. It causes friction within relationships. And what happens? Relationships are separated. Bad things happen. Relationships, friends, family members are separated. It divides. And deceit is hostile. It's an act of war. In fact, if you think about it, this is the number one tactic of our enemy, Satan. This is what he does. He practices deception. Why? Because he knows it destroys. He knows it separates and it divides. And this is ultimately what Satan is trying to do. If he can destroy, if he can separate, if he can divide, especially God's family, if he can divide your family, this is what he will do. He will destroy it through deception. And it's no wonder that when the disciples, when they asked Jesus, what will be the sign of your coming? Basically, when is the end of the age? We refer to it as the end times, right? What are the signs when that's going to happen? The number one concern that Jesus had in His answer was deception. He warned several times, do not be deceived. And we live in an age of deception, and deception is only going to grow as we get closer to that time. And we have to be careful as believers that we don't partake in that way of life, that we don't partake in that manner of deception, that we are not a part of that. Because it is clear that this is the mode that Satan is trying to achieve his plan. And wreck God's plan is through deception. So when we practice deception, we're not siding with God, we're siding with who? Our enemy. So we have to be very careful. It is an act of war. It is hostile. It is destructive, especially to relationships. And there's nothing more that Satan would love to do in the house of God is to come in and to cause for there to be deception, there to be manipulation, so that he can cause strife, so that he can divide relationships and split up churches. And we see this happening all over the place because this is what the enemy does, and we must make sure that we are not used of the enemy to cause that ourselves. Deceit is often driven by envy, coveting, and greed. If deceit causes destruction and chaos, like why would we do that? It's because we want something. Listen to what James chapter 4, 1 through 3 says, and this is brilliant. What is the source of wars and fights among you? Don't they come from your passions that wage war within you? You desire and do not have. You murder and covet and cannot obtain. You fight and wage war. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and don't receive because you ask with the wrong motives, so that you may spend it on your pleasures. So what James is saying here is, listen, he's like, the reason you fight, the reason there's wars, the reason all of this is happening is because deep down inside you want something. And you want something so bad, you're willing to sin in order to get it. Whatever that sin is, it manifests in many different ways. Here he mentions murder. Here for Jacob and Esau, it was deception. I'm going to deceive your father so that I can receive the blessing. But why? It's because they desired something so much. Their desire to obtain something was greater than their love for God, that it led to them being willing to manipulate, deceive, destroying, blowing up their whole family and causing strife between their family lines for centuries to come. And even still today, there is still tension between these two. So knowing that deceit was a huge problem, knowing that Jacob obtained the blessing, even though God prophesied it, he obtained it through deceit, why would God honor that? Why would he do that? Why would he not intervene? Well, it's because God is a God of second chances. And because Jacob is going to encounter God in a very special and unique way, more than anybody on the face of the earth has ever encountered God. In fact, he's going to have a name change pretty soon, and that's what we're going to talk about next week. But for us as believers, we don't need to pursue deceptive practice. We don't need to pursue manipulation. What should we pursue? Well, Psalms 34 tells us. Verse 12, who is someone who desires life, loving a long life to enjoy what is good? Keep your tongue from evil and your lips from deceitful speech. Turn away from evil and do what is good. Seek peace and pursue it. So this is what the psalmist says. If you want to have an enjoyable, pleasurable life, what do you need to do? Don't lie. Don't practice deceit. Don't be manipulative. Instead, you need to pursue truth. You need to be a people of truth who embraces truth, lives by the truth. And you need to pursue peace. Because deception, deceit, what does it do? It destroys. It ruins everything. And the psalmist knew this, and so he's like, if you want to live a peaceful life, pursue truth. Like, don't practice that, because you're going to be miserable. And oftentimes, your manipulation, your deceit, oftentimes it comes back to bite. And I wonder if Rebecca, she's on her deathbed, and she's wondering if she lives with regret, that she regretted what she had done. I just wonder, because she never saw her son again. And the last thing she said, at least in Scripture, was that she didn't want to lose both sons. Well, guess what? She did. She did. So here's our life lesson for today, is that deceit destroys, while the people of God should pursue truth and peace. Deceit, it destroys, but the people of God, what should we pursue? Truth and peace. God is a God of truth. God's Word is truth. The Word of truth is like a lamp. It makes everything clear to see. And so we should be a people of truth. And so as we live our life, we should always ask ourselves, what is true? What is reality? What is right? And pursue that. We should pursue peace with one another. We should not be divisive people, especially the people of God. And this is what Jesus said, that He wanted His people to be known as those who love one another, because it kind of encapsulates both of these ideas of truth and peace, that we should be pursuing that. That we should pursue truth. We should pursue peace. That we should not have destructive relationships, but we should have peaceful ones. So Rebecca and Jacob, they learned this the hard way, and it's a lesson for us all, that we should pursue peace. And this is what we should be known as. Blessed are the peacemakers, right? So this week, as we live our life, let's embrace truth. Let's don't embrace deceitful practices. Parents, let's teach and train our kids to be kids who are truthful and honest, who don't practice manipulation. Let's be honest, we don't have to teach our kids to be manipulative. We don't have to teach them to be deceitful. We don't have to teach them how to lie. Our natural self just knows how to do that. I was a kid once. I remember what it was like, right? We have to teach them and train them how to be honest, how to be trustworthy, and how to be people of peace, and not allow manipulative, deceitful practices in our life. And it starts with us as parents. It starts with us saying, all right, I'm going to be truthful and honest, even if it hurts. Because that is, in essence, who God is, and that's what God wants.